Right. All right. So, hello. It's June the 5th today. I just was apologizing for forgetting to mention it was Jerusalem Day yesterday. So, that's a big deal. Super happy to have Ari Sacher on. And if you haven't been on when he's on, he was one of the engineers with the Iron Dome. Also, Ari, I loved your piece. I read all of your blogs that you had. It was David Sling, I think, that you also had, you worked on that as well. Maybe you could mention that. But also one thing, Ari, I want to get your input. Maybe it's just me, but I've been just really been sensing that there's hidden things that are going to be revealed and will continue to be revealed. And when we're looking at the Philadelphia corridor, when we're looking at that Gaza um, border with Egypt and 50 tunnels, and just thinking there's just no way in the world that Egypt didn't know about this, or that a Sisi's son was in charge of that corridor, that border. I mean, it, how is it possible that America didn't know about that? I don't know. I'm just thinking, what are the Israelis thinking? I'm feeling this little bit of righteous outrage against that being discovered and not being brought forward previously. So just thoughts on that, as well as you're brilliant with all things war. We want to hear about the North, what's going on with Hezbollah. So over to you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wait, let's just get Gaza out of the way because that's in everybody's mind who's not in Israel. Because in Israel, there's other things that are actually that are much more um, brightening than Gaza. As we said many times, the last city that the Hamas has really not been extricated from is a city called Rafah, Hebrew Rafiah. It's on the southern tip of Gaza, on the border between Gaza and the Sinai Desert, which is owned and operated by Egypt. Um, Rafiah is proving to be it's a surprise and it's not a surprise. You see, in the time of before the current Egyptian administration, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, he actually took over from the Muslim Brotherhood, a guy named Morsi, Ibrahim Morsi, and Morsi, when he was in power, the border between Rafiah and the Sinai Desert, it was essentially open, and there were tunnels, and there were weapons being smuggled in, and people being smuggled in, and it was really a huge source of oxygen for the Gazans, and they used that corridor, the Philadelphia corridor, is what it's called, the border between. Why did they call it the Philadelphia corridor? I don't recall why. I think it has something to do with the Philadelphia Flyers, but I don't understand really. No, I'm just kidding. And that was essentially shut down when Al-Sisi took over. Al-Sisi took over. In order to shut it down, he actually dredged the Mediterranean Sea, which is, if this is the Gaza Strip, the bottom is Egypt, the side of the strip is the Mediterranean Sea. He dredged the sea, and he actually he filled all of the corridors with water. That essentially shut down the trade, but it was open long enough for Gaza to get what it needed in order to put together specifically factories, and factories to make weaponry, specifically rockets. Now, has happened over the last while, and I don't think anybody was surprised that it has happened, is that Hamas has been digging tunnels underneath the border between Gaza and Egypt, and each tunnel is, in more ways than one, just a source of oxygen, of fresh air. It enables goods to be smuggled in from the Sinai to Gaza, and it also enables free passage from Gaza to Sinai. And what's on the back of everyone's mind is, has that, or have those tunnels been used by Hamas brass?
Hmm.
specifically Sinwar and his henchmen, and have those tunnels been used to smuggle hostages out of Gaza into the Sinai Desert. And who knows, maybe the hostages are floating around in Iran or in some
Right.
European capital. The
Yeah.
going assumption is that that did not happen, because even if they get through Gaza, they get from Gaza into Sinai. Sinai is still administered by the Egyptians. No one is 100% sure exactly how much the Egyptians know, but the Sinai Desert is it's a barren place, and it's very,
Mhm.
very difficult to get things out. That said, no one really knows. The Israelis came in a very short period of time. We took over the Philadelphia corridor and
Mhm.
we uncovered tunnels. We did
Yeah.
not uncover the tunnels. We uncovered tunnels, and we have no idea how many tunnels there were and how many of the tunnels we uncovered.
Wow.
The thing is that now we are managing the border between Hamas and Egypt, and
Mhm.
whatever happened, happened. And we believe that we are in a position to prevent any further passage of goods into Gaza or people out of Gaza. So once we've taken over the Philadelphia corridor, then Gaza will be suffocated.
Right.
There is no way for the Gazans to get, and there's always some way, but there's officially no way for the Gazans to get any more goods, any more weapons, and so that's was it was very, very important that we take over the Philadelphia corridor. What is more pressing to Israelis than Gaza today is the northern border. There are close to 200,000 people that live that are have houses within 5 kilometers of the Lebanese border. These people have, for all intents and purposes, been kicked out of their house. They've been evacuated since the 7th of October, and they are in houses and hotels all over the country,
Wow.
from Tiberias in the north, and can't go too much further north than that, until a lot in the south of the country. Indeed, on our congressional tour, the USIA congressional tour, our members were staying in a really highfalutin hotel, and there were people walking around the hotel with their laundry going to on the washing machines
Wow.
that the mayor of Kiryat Shmona, which is really the largest city, installed in these hotels. It is very difficult, bordering on impossible, to convince these people to come home, because over the last number of weeks, Hezbollah and Lebanon have vastly increased the rocket fire onto these places and anti-tank missile. They're just firing at will, and Israel is responding. Um, we always announce, yes, we hit an important arms depot and a excuse me. The feeling is that we are showing that we are impotent in the face of Hezbollah weapons. What has happened over the last week is that, as opposed to in March and February and January, when they were firing rockets at us, and there was still the rainy season. It has not rained in Israel for more than a month, and all what used to be grass is now turned to tinder. And every time, Iron Dome does not intercept everything that's fired at us. Iron Dome, David Sling. What Iron Dome does, we say, if it's going to fall here, I want you to shoot it down, because this is where the people live. If it's going to fall outside of these areas that you predefine, then don't waste $100,000 shooting it down, because it's not going to hurt anybody. Well, it turns out that their rockets and their anti-tank missiles are falling in areas that no one cares about, but they are igniting tinder, which essentially is saying that you have to intercept everything, and that is economically unfeasible. The North is on fire. It is worse than it has ever been before. The worst
Wow.
was before here was in the Second Lebanon War of 2006. And there have been, according to official estimates, more than double the amount of land has been burnt to a crisp. There is no one who's coming back to places like Kiryat Shmona. In fact, what you hear, what I can't believe, what you hear is people denigrating the mayor, Avichai Stern, who spoke for our congressional tour, the mayor of Kiryat Shmona, telling you to shut up and we'll fight. I live 25 kilometers from the border, and I can tell you that I am concerned. I hear booms all the time because these are intercepts, Iron Dome over Akko, where my son lives, and over Naharia. The situation is becoming untenable to the point that we are finding ourselves on a brink in which the only way to to stop, to staunch the rocket fire and to
Right.
get back any semblance of power is by by attacking. And no one wants to attack Lebanon because that war.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Today, I spoke to a bunch of people who were in a stadium in Haifa, huge soccer stadium, 30, 40,000 people at Sami Ofer. And as I was sitting in the room that we were briefing them, huge box seats looking out onto the grass. I remembered someone telling me that if things ever go south, then that stadium will be used as a mass morgue. A war
Wow.
against Hezbollah will be very, very painful for all sides, and it's something that nobody wants. But we're really at a brink in which there is very little left to do. And yesterday,
Wow.
actually today, my third son was he went back to the army for a stint. My
Hmm.
sixth son was went back to the army on Monday, and they're up on the northern border for the next 40 days. And we are sitting here on a powder keg. So
Wow.
that's what's going on
Wow.
in Israel. You ask what concerns us the most. What concerns us the most is the northern border by far.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for, reiterating that we really need to start praying for that more. As far as ammunitions, do you feel that Israel has enough to take on the northern border, or I'm just wondering about the stockpile?
I understand is as long as the United States continues sending us these weapons, that we need artillery shells, JDAM, Joint Direct Attack munitions, and SDB, small diameter bombs, then we have enough to fight a two-front war. Um, Israel will not be the same after this war is over. We have spent so much money on the southern border and the northern border that life in Israel, I mean, my grandchildren are going to be paying for this. Our income taxes are going to jump. The value added tax today is 17%. In other words, if I pay about 50% of what I earn in income tax, and whatever's left, 17% of that goes to the government as well. That's going to rise as well in order to pay for this. People are going to be doing more army. Someone's going to have to pay for the more army services being done. We're not going to leave the North bare like it was before. On October the 7th, if Hezbollah had joined the fray, we would be having a very, very different conversation. But on October the 8th, we sent about 100,000 soldiers up to the northern border where they will pretty much remain doing reserve
Wow.
duty and being switched every couple of months. Someone's got to pay for this. So it was nice living in La La Land for Denmark. It was nice living in Finland and Sweden, but Israelis have been shocked into the existence that we do live in the Middle East, and the life we led before will be very, very different than the life we lead in the future. This is the price we have to pay for our freedom and for our continued existence.
Gosh. All right. Thank you so much for that. Could I ask you one more question here about, well, your kids, you mentioned your kids, we pray for them and we pray for your son-in-law also in the war. The David Sling weapon system, you were one of the engineers on that. Just tell everybody that actually won an Israel, tell it the Israel Security Prize. Could you just mention that? Because that's a pretty,
There's a prize given every year to two or three or four different systems that have made a seminal change in Israel's defense posture. I mean, Iron Dome won the Israel it's possibly the Hon Israel, it's called the Israel Defense Prize. Iron Dome won it, various other missile systems won it, and this year David Sling won the award. David Sling, and I was not surprised because to date, before October 7th, David Sling had a precious few intercepts. David Sling takes out targets that are flying longer than farther and faster than targets that come from Gaza. And David Sling also has a much larger footprint than Iron Dome. If Iron Dome has a range of about 10 kilometers, David Sling has a range which is more than an order of magnitude larger. Um,
Wow.
but on October the 7th, David Sling really saved Israel because on October 7th, Hamas opened fire, unleashed a huge barrage of missiles on Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And we
Yeah.
didn't have Iron Dome interceptors in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem then. We No one expected there to be a war. And
Yeah.
so David Sling took out bad boys over Tel Aviv and took out bad boys over Jerusalem. And since then, it's been doing a yeoman's job. So it's unsurprising that the system won it. I had the pleasure, the honor of serving in David Sling in the program for the first 5 years of its inception. David Sling was jointly developed, as opposed to Iron Dome, which has exactly $0 of U.S. money in development. David Sling it was a joint collaborative program. We worked with a small American company, perhaps you've heard of it, called Raytheon. They've changed their name to McDonald's? No, RTX. That's Raytheon, and we worked. My job was to manage Raytheon, and I did that for 5 years till I
Wow.
moved on to Iron Dome.